David, could you pause recording, please?
And members of the viewing public. Thank you for joining us live from the Guild of Students Facebook page. Today, what you are about to witness is the epiphany of social responsibility. The Economic Society recognizes the importance of bringing to life the theoretical framework of the economy as it relates to government, business, student life, and certainly the average man and woman on the street. This forum is an expression of this recognition and is presented through the topics of economic growth, economic development, health, agriculture and food security, gender responsive budgeting. Our esteemed panel is a multidisciplinary panel with diverse backgrounds in economics, agriculture, medical sciences, international relations, and communications. And we'll introduce you to our panelists one by one as we invite them to entertain questions from you, our viewing audience. So sit back, relax, enjoy. Hopefully you have a item that had VAT on it before, enjoying it right now, and engage in the promising presentations and discussion. But before we get into the heart of the matter, I invite the president of the Economic Society, Ms. Ruqayyah Scott, to give an address on behalf of the society. Ms. Scott.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for everyone who's tuned in right now. My name is Ruqayyah Scott, and I am the president of the Economic Society of the UWI St. Augustine campus. And it is my pleasure, it is my honor. This is our first major event for the semester, for the academic year, our post-budget forum. Today we have an exciting lineup. You know, as young budding economists, you know, the membership of the Economic Society, we value and we understand that economics goes just beyond numbers and just beyond dollars and cents. And that is why today, you know, we've brought a different kind of conversation to discussing the budget. This is going to be a panel like no other. I can promise you that for sure. It is going to be a youth perspective, all young people inside here, and it's going to be one from various backgrounds. And we're not afraid to critique and to praise as we see fit objectively as we can. So thank you to everyone who's tuned in right now. I encourage everyone to share their questions and to stay till the end of this with us. Ask your questions, of course, and just let us know how you feel about this budget. So thank you very much for everyone tuned in. Thank you to all the panelists who are here today. Thank you, Warren. And you know, we're gonna have a great event this afternoon. Thank you.
Great, excellent welcome from the president, Ruqayyah Scott there. And in case you didn't know, members of this panel and certainly members of the Econ Society have actually been making the rounds on traditional media, sharing a lot of the knowledge that they have and discuss with the nation, right? So you may recognize some faces. But what this panel does is give you a unique opportunity to get further insight into their thoughts and their presentations, right? So don't enjoy this experience by yourself. Share it with everybody on your pages right now. And what we're going to do is get into the heart of the matter with our very first panelists. Flowing right from the president, we go into the vice president of the Economic Society, and this is Ms. Dina Sookdeo. She's a postgraduate student pursuing her Masters of Science in Economics at the University of the West Indies. And of course, I would have just said that she's the Vice President of the Economic Society and is also a United Nations Ambassador for Sustainable Development Goals. Her passion lies in economic development and monetary policy as she aims to become a renowned economist that can make a meaningful impact with her economic contributions. And so I invite Ms. Dina Sookdeo to the floor right now to give some opening remarks.
Thank you, Warren, for that lovely introduction. Good afternoon to everyone tuned in. Thank you for being here. I will be speaking on economic growth this afternoon, and without any further ado, I will get straight into my presentation. So firstly, from observing our past budgets, the way in which our government fiscally handles the economy is that we tend to match our revenues to our expenditures rather than the other way around, which would be matching our expenditures to our revenues, which is the more logical thing to do. And this is why we often end up in large deficits over and over again. Now, of course, Trinidad is what we call a small island developing state, and developmental deficits are necessary, don't get me wrong. But the manner of unsustainability in which we have been spending is detrimental to our growth and development at this point. And what I've noticed too is a lot of short-term spending, a lot of short-term planning going on. So governments tend to take the, how do we fix this problem in the short term, and no thought is really given to the term, you know, crisis is opportunity to do better. And it's always a case of, as they say, Peter paying for Paul. Of course, extraordinary situations like COVID-19 will arise and exacerbate our spending to ensure that, you know, our priority remains in our human capital, that is our citizenry. One thing I've also noted in this budget was that, like always, the government failed to give citizens the actual fiscal stance of the country. So the government, you would find they tend to quote unquote sugarcoat what is actually going on. And to me, they read a budget that I even heard some citizens say sounded like a bed of roses, when in reality, our fiscal stance is far from a bed of roses. And that concerns me, because if we are unaware of what is really going on, we will continue to behave in a manner that will be detrimental. As it stands right now, we are swimming in debt. And GDP for 2020 was projected to decrease by 6.8%, which is not a small number, as we all know. So what really makes up our GDP, which is our country's income? We have consumption, investments, government spending, which revenue is a part of and is made up of taxation, and we have net exports. So what I want to do is analyze each of these components briefly for you all and tell you my thoughts on it based on yesterday's presentation. Now, consumption is low due to unemployment, quarantine measures to combat COVID-19, loss of disposable income, falls in the labor participation rates, poverty, and the list goes on and on and on. Now, recently, because of these things happening, we've had some major policy measures taken by our central bank to try and push liquidity into the system. So we saw they dropped the reserve requirements and the repo rate. But unfortunately, the response to this has been really sluggish, and it was not the ideal response we would have liked to see. So it shows that people are still not responding to consumption stimulation methods. Moving on to investment. Now, in the reading of the budget, I was quite surprised to hear the Honorable Minister express his discontent with our ease of doing business and its rank. And that really surprised me, that he stood up and expressed such discontent, because it is this same administration's poor policy making in the past 6 years that made our ease of doing business drop from, I think it was 65 to 105 or something like that. But what really is disheartening is that in the budget, he did not give any substantial ways to inform us on how they plan on getting our ease of doing business rank back to where it was. In fact, the only measure mentioned was the automation processes that would have allowed for easier imports and exports and reducing the time to gain approvals by statutory industries. Moving on to expenditure, the government is, as we all know, they're cutting expenditure, but it is going to have to find ways to increase their domestic revenue. And you know, this is where our taxation is going to come in. This is where our VAT is going to come in. And of course, the burning property tax. This is where all of this comes in. And I, for one, I'm pleased to see the addition of VAT to luxury imported items such as strawberries and champagnes and things like this. This policy should have been implemented a long time ago to support our domestic agriculture sector. But the thing is, even with these taxes implemented, such as property tax and VAT, we still need to consider that Trinidad and Tobago, we have a very relatively low taxation base, and they made it even lower in adjusting the income bracket for taxation. So in essence, the most feasible thing that the government could have done was, you know, really try to improve our ease of doing business rank. And even with other spending on basic things like education and so on, they could have adjusted it way more efficiently, in my opinion, but I won't get into that now. We could perhaps return to that during the discussion. And finally, the last component I want to look at is net exports. Now, during the reading of the budget, the Honorable Minister made mention of a lot of stimulus to the agriculture sector, which I'm pleased to have heard, and I'm sure my colleague speaking on agriculture will speak more about that. He also made mention of improving the manufacturing sector. So all of these non-booming tradable sectors are critical for achieving a lot of sustainable growth moving forward. And while their plans are sound, what I'm rather concerned about is the implementation. That is where we always fall short. Thank you. Warren, your mic is muted.
Thank you very much. Dana, I want to ask you a question based on your presentation. Sometimes growth comes at the cost of lower living standards. How do you think we can maintain the living standards while fostering growth? Is it even possible given our nature?
You see, this question is a bit of a tricky one to get into, but it's truly a question that I think we actually need to explore. The whole concept of having lower living standards and inequality and stuff in the name of economic growth stems from economists like Simon Kuznets, and I'm sure a lot of people who are doing their undergrad in economics would know who I'm speaking about. But there is no real evidence that shows that, you know, we need to go through a process of lower living standards to achieve economic growth. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, I do agree that we need to take some extraordinary measures and make certain sacrifices to get the economy back on its feet. But my concern is, with sacrificing the standards of living for economic growth, is really who really benefits from that economic growth if it's unsustainable growth. You know, we have the 1%, the wealthy in society, and you tend to find that the majority of our citizenry who falls in the middle to low income bracket will not be the ones benefiting unless diversification takes place and we have some redistribution of wealth taking place. Instead, what I would recommend is that we actually place our human development at the center of our policy making, and you know, we achieve sustainable growth from the inside out rather than from the outside in.
That's thank you very much for that. I want to ask you one more thing though. How essential is the role of government in TNT in facilitating economic growth?
Very. Our government is our highest investor and our biggest employer in the economy. And our government has also assumed a very, very paternal role that somewhat deepens our dependency syndrome over time. And that can actually counter growth and development at times. Therefore, given their role, they are the primary ones that can actually push for growth. Our economies depend on consumption for growth. And I think as such, our policies need to be tailored to promoting and preserving consumption levels. And even though we say that the private sector plays a huge role in economic growth, the governments are the ones who will incentivize the private sector and, you know, provide that workable environment for them. So I also think that the government is responsible for navigating the type of growth we have, whether it's sustainable, unsustainable, and things like that. So in essence, they are the main factor in achieving our economic growth.
Thank you very much, Dina. And what I would like to do right now is move on to our next panelist. We met her before earlier in the program, given her address. This is Ms. Ruqayyah Scott, who is the Economic Society president. She is currently an undergraduate student pursuing her BSc in economics with a minor in environmental economics. Passionate about leadership, economics, politics, and diplomacy. I would have said before, she is the president of the Economic Society of UWI, but she's also the vice chair of CWIL, Trinidad and Tobago National Chapter, and former Trinidad and Tobago Youth Ambassador to the United States. Ruqayyah works internationally to ensure that young people are represented both locally and internationally, as she commits herself to becoming a well-rounded and well-informed young leader. So, Ruqayyah Scott, tell us a bit about economic development.
Thank you very much, Warren, for that introduction. Thank you, Dana, for your presentation. So my presentation is going to be about economic development, and it's actually going to piggyback of what Dana just presented, you know, our monetary and fiscal position. So what is economic development? So economic growth would deal with, you know, the increase in level of output, but economic development is a bit more than that. It refers to, yes, increase in outputs and improvements, but in various sectors. So it's not just about one sector or just growing our output in general, but it's about the continuous improvement of the various sectors in our economy, coupled with the social and political welfare of the people within a country. So talking about economic development, we want to see what happened in the budget with respect to economic development, what happened to our different sectors, and how are they now on the path to developing in a way that's truly sustainable and beneficial to our economy. So first, we have those non-revenue earning sectors. And when I say non-revenue earning, I mean those are the sectors that we don't necessarily use to propel our revenue. So for example, there is national security, which deals with our safety and security of the nation. We saw that there was a decrease in funds allocated to national security, and we know that crime has actually gone down in the past couple of months. And whilst I see everyone, you know, celebrating that, we have to keep in mind that we're in difficult times, and it's actually expected that crime would go down if we're all mostly at home, you know what I mean? So I'm actually interested to see how the national security sector is actually going to go into more research and development to prevent crime from happening in the first place. Then another sector that we don't necessarily earn revenue from, but it seems to be one of the sectors that we spend a lot on actually, is education. Education got the highest allocation this year with $7.9 billion. Now, the finance minister, he said that 50 million is going to be dedicated towards getting devices to schools. And then we also know that taxes on certain devices were lowered, which are great initiatives. However, I still haven't seen any discussion about what is going to happen to gates and what is the real developmental plan for the education of those in this country. And then, of course, we have health. And I'm not going to get into health because I know we have someone here who is going to talk about health in length. Local government, works and transport, housing, they were all on a decrease, actually. As you know, we have to kind of reevaluate how we disperse our funds. So now moving on to the sectors that actually earn us revenue. So let's start with the agricultural sector. We know that we have not been operating our agricultural sector as we should, and I was very pleased, you know, to see some sort of movement towards that. But moving away from agriculture, because we have someone here to talk specifically about agriculture and food security, I want to touch a bit on the arts and culture industry. So two things that I saw that were mentioned by the Minister of Finance was that, one, the grants will be continued to be given to those in the arts and culture industries till December 2020. And then there were going to be incentives to have more local content on the radio to promote artists. And for me, arts and culture is such a big part of Caribbean culture. It is massive. In fact, our carnival industry is massive. And I felt as though just to hear that grants are going to be continued and we're going to make provision to have local content played on radio is really not enough, because I firmly believe that we can actually have a digital version of carnival and we can market that to the entire world. Carnival brings in hundreds of millions of dollars every single year, and it's very disappointing that there wasn't much discussion around that. Likewise, to the tourism industry, we know that Tobago actually brings in the majority of tourism revenue, and in fact, Tobago's allocation was reduced to 2.134 billion. So that is a thing, you know, to be concerned about, of course. And then a big one is our manufacturing sector. The finance minister, you know, spoke about transformation and diversification and new and niche markets and how they're gonna put incentives for the private sector and the ease of doing business and all these nice things. But my thing is, what is this support you're talking about? We are going to support the private sector. What is this support? We saw what happened with the new car and foreign used car industries as well, with the tax concessions. So we need more. It can't just be we are going to support the private sector in diversification. What does that mean? It's not something that we can actually work with. And then, of course, a big one is how we are going about this digitalizing the public sector. sector, which is good. Focus on the schools, yes, free national Wi-Fi, yes, national database, all this is good things, but it is not revenue earning. That is the thing about it's not revenue earning. So which brings me to the most abused word of the decade, this diversification. But in my opinion, this budget doesn't even have a strong approach to diversifying the economy. The finance minister indicated support will be given to the private sector to new and niche markets, and I'm assuming this is his big diversification plan. However, when we speak about private sector, who are we talking about? Are we talking about the large businesses? Are we talking about me and you? Because I know I can't invest in no new niche markets. And a lot of young people actually are unable to invest in these new markets. So what area of the private sector is the finance minister referring to? And okay, yes, we don't have the resources, the smaller entrepreneurs, and which is why we need more state intervention and participation in the diversification process. And it should not be 100% left in the hands of the private sector. And then lastly, before I wrap up, I just want to touch on one big thing. When we talk about economic development, we talk about the social welfare of the population, and we all know how bad unemployment is in the country right now. In fact, we know that the public sector is, highly inefficient, overstaffed, and those sort of things. And the government's way of managing that was to freeze vacancies in the public sector. But you're doing that without actually fixing the bureaucracy in the public sector, which is the reason why the public sector does not operate at the efficiency level it should operate at. So my question is, let's say that 3 people or 4 people retire from a specific department within the public sector, let's say in Wassel or something. All right, well, we're hiring people, so you take 3 clerks and put them in that position. But then in the public sector, to pass anything, you need a signature from clerk 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You gotta go in this department, that department. So we're not fixing the red tape, we're not fixing the bureaucracy, but we have a freeze on it. So I actually wonder what that is actually going to mean for a lot of people who are looking for private sector, public sector jobs and so forth, and just the overall, unemployment issue in the country. So as I wind down now, when we speak about economic development, it goes more than production. Development takes into consideration the ability of the economy and its citizens to have a favorable standard of living. So we need to have more sustainable development goals, and not just for the short term. There was a lot of talk about how young people get to do all of this in creative industry and in technology. Not all young people are creatives, not all young people are in technology. So we have to remember that we need to stop stereotyping young people as well. So all of this plans, yes, young people, this. What about the young people in the disadvantaged communities? They are part of our citizenry. We need to develop their education. We need to develop their lives, and not just our young people. We need to take our human capital seriously, and we need to put people at the focus of our economy and plan our objectives around people. So that's my thoughts on this budget. Of course, we have some great things in there that will propel us on the right path, but we definitely can do way more in terms of developing our sectors and developing the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So thank you, Warren. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruqayyah, for that very passionate presentation. Before we move on, I want to ask, because you did touch on diversification, and we know that this conversation has been around for a very long time, but I feel like we fail to recognize the consequence of failing to diversify. So what about you? Do you think that diversification is more important now than ever before?
Well, of course, it is very important now, but before we move to diversify the economy, we need to decide on a couple of things. One, we need to decide, is it that diversification is going to be a state responsibility? Is it going to be a private sector responsibility, or is it going to be a collaboration? If it's going to be a state responsibility, then obviously you have to fix the bureaucracy, because if it is WASA is inefficient, Petrotrin was inefficient, what says that the new industry that you're investing in going to be inefficient as well? So we need to change that. So I think that is what we have to change first before we look to diversify the economy, if it's to come from a state perspective. And in general, I don't think it should be 100% on the private sector. I think it should at the very least be a collaboration.
Very interesting. So we're talking public-private partnership there. But how essential is the linkage or communication between the people of our nation and the government in attempting to diversify?
I love that question. But what we need to do is that we need to ensure that we get involved. And I don't mean in any big way, like it's real simple. I think we need to start getting involved more so that the policymakers actually hear our ideas. Now, I think not just young people, people of Trinidad and Tobago have the most ideas when it comes to how we can get the economy running up. I remember as soon as Carnival was cancelled, someone wrote a big long status about with 20 different suggestions as to how we could digitize Carnival. And there are all good suggestions as well. So what I'm saying is that people, us, all of us, we need to do our job. If something is happening and we know, all right, I could invest here, or this is an opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago, and you have suggestions, I would say to take those suggestions to the relevant authorities that could actually make it happen.
Indeed. So we're looking to make it happen for sure going forward. And our next panelist is we're diversifying out of the economic majors into a student from the medical sciences on the topic of health. And his name is Adil Mohammed. He is 22 years old and he's in year 4 of the MBBS program. He's a student who is passionate about cosmology, philosophy, humanitarian activities, and health and fitness. He is the current Medical Sciences Student Council chairperson and the UWI St. Augustine Guild Faculty of Medical Sciences representative. He aims to enter the world of neurosurgery and in doing so, bring benefit to the lives of others. So let's hear now from Adil Mohammed, my fellow counselor.
Oh boy, good afternoon everybody, and thank you Warren for that lovely introduction. That's my guild prezi earlier. All right, so I'm here today to talk to you all about healthcare, the healthcare sector, the Ministry of Health, and what's going on with respect to the budget. So the allocation made for the Ministry of Health was $6.05 billion. Now, that's a relatively high allocation with respect to some of the other allocations that were given. And it's certainly an increase in the total allocation as compared to last year, which was about 5.2 billion. So that allocation last year was about, let's say, 9% of the national budget, around that. And this year's allocation is about 12% of our national budget. So the overall percentage as well as the total amount definitely increased. And that's definitely a step in the right direction, because if you look at places where they actually have medical tourism like Canada and so on, their national allocation is usually about the same thing, which is 12% of their national budget. So it's good to see that we're finally prioritizing the need for more money into the healthcare sector, right? However, I'll get into some of the reasons about that later. But at the same time, it's all well and good to have the money there and for us to say, okay, it's in our account or whatever. But it's what we really do with that money and how that money is spent that truly matters to us, right? And that's how we're going to make changes in the healthcare sector. So let me explain a few things here about how the healthcare sector itself works. The healthcare system composes of a public and a private sector, right? Now, your private healthcare system is generally not associated too much with the public healthcare sector. Of course, there is interplay, just as we were talking about with the public sector, private sector interplay. There's the same thing in the healthcare sector. However, I would say that's negligible as compared to with respect to the budget and with respect to the monetary allocations. So the public sector is divided into what we call the RHAs, or the Regional Health Associations. You have the NWRHA, Northwest, North Central, South, East, and Tobago, right? And these all accommodate, these 5 RHAs accommodate for all the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. I could go into the numbers, but I really don't think you all know how much people that have in Trinidad, right? And in this system, it's what we call a single payer system. So basically the government provides the funds for funding everything, right? And that's what we would count under our recurrent expenditure. And the draft estimates for the recurrent expenditure from last year, according to the Ministry of Health again, was about 5 billion. So their budget last year was 5.2 billion, right? And their expenditure was about 5.5 billion. So in recurrent expenditure alone, they spent 5 billion. So then where do we get innovation? Where do we get development? Well, they only had 500 million left over for that development programs and infrastructural development and whatnot. So we see this recurrent expenditure being increased every single year. And we definitely need to, and that's definitely going to happen now because we're in a pandemic, right? And we have right now situations where the RHs are barely even able to provide PPE enough or sufficiently for doctors. A lot of doctors, if you talk to them, they will say that they have to wear PPE sometimes for 8 hours, 7 to 8 hours. And that's not how PPE is supposed to be worn, right? So, I mean, this is a problem globally. Yeah? This is not just in Trinidad, but I am saying that the recurrent expenditure this year is definitely going to be increasing because of that. And we need to find ways to combat it and to try to accommodate for that. So the 6.05, it's a step in the right direction, but I definitely think that there can be improvements. Can I say if it's going to be enough this year? Honestly, I can't. I do, however, think that it can be enough if it is the funds are utilized properly. And as a nation, and this was said before, and I really love this point, is that as a nation, we need to start having more long-term vision rather than focusing on just short-term successes, because that is how we're really gonna achieve any sort of change in this nation. And it comes where we need to have governments focusing on what's going to happen after their tenure and after they're out of office, or when it is they might not be here, but focusing on the future of the country rather than just what it is they could do within their little 5 years. You understand? We also heard them speak about, high value manufacturing being increased. So things like pharmaceuticals and nutraceuticals, which is all well and good. And that's actually a long-term vision. So I'm really happy to see that there, because if it is we can increase those kind of things in Trinidad and Tobago, we could work to improve programs like the CDAP or whatever. With respect to, and this is one point I wanted to make actually, is the point about freezing the filling of the public sector and prolonging the retirement age to 65 years old, right? Now, 5 years is a very substantial amount of time. And in the medical sector, at least, that's a very big thing, because most of our consultants would be people who are older. And you're prolonging the time period that they would be there. And granted, we are very, very grateful for all our older consultants, and they definitely have the knowledge and wisdom that we need, and because they are our teachers. But there comes a point where you limit the persons that can come into the sector, and that really get the chance to bring this new blood and further advance the sector. So Warren, I go back over to you.
Thank you, Adil, for that in-depth analysis. I want to ask you on behalf of the audience here, because right now, digital transformation, given COVID, is on the top of all of our minds. How limited are our services in the health sector as a result of technological deficiencies? And do you see the need to invest in medical technology right now?
So the question is what right now? And the answer to that would be probably not so much. Yes, there's always need for investment in medical technologies. But right now, we don't really need to focus on investing in medical technologies, more just maintaining what it is we already have, because in Trinidad and Tobago, we have pretty good equipment. It's just to focus on regular servicing and proper functional tests or whatever to ensure that this equipment is working year round, and that the servicing requirements of these equipment meet the international standards. In the Hoover Health Facility, do you know that we actually have a MRI machine that is probably the only of its kind in the country? Not in the country, in the Caribbean, sorry, right? And it's probably one of the best MRI machines possible, but we're not being able to utilize it because it's just sitting down there and it needs to be serviced or whatever. So with respect to the investment in medical technologies, not right now, but it definitely can be something we look into in the future. Right now, I think the focus should be on ensuring the safety of our healthcare professionals and ensuring they have enough PPE and whatnot.
Very interesting. So we have the technology, but it is underutilized. So what do you think then about the hospital construction program giving rise to new health facilities such as Arima and the Point Fortin Hospital? Do you actually think that this is enough to address the inefficiencies in the public health sector? And while you're at it, tell me if you think that more or what more can be done to address these inefficiencies.
So that's also a very nice question, Warren. Thanks. So with respect to the inefficiencies in the public health sector, I would say one of the #1 inefficiencies, and ask anybody in Trinidad and Tobago, is this, is beds. Everybody wants some beds. We have no beds here. And definitely, focusing on investing in more infrastructure is one of the ways that we could improve this, as well as maybe, increasing the medical staff, such as nurses and doctors and things on the wards. But other ways that we could improve it, and again, this is with respect to what I was talking about earlier, actually, with respect to having long-term vision, and this is something called public health. Now, public health is not the same thing as public health care. Public health is a division of medicine that focuses on everything from policy making, policy development, to raising awareness, to focusing on how it is you treat certain diseases, epidemiology, all of that sort of stuff falls under public health. And if it is, we were able to properly invest more in the public health sector of the country and increase the awareness, increase how it is people are aware of these sort of diseases that they don't necessarily have to have, like your non-communicable diseases. These are the #1 preventable diseases in the world, and the thing is, we could prevent it, but like we just don't. Why? Because our population needs to be more aware of how it is they can prevent these diseases. And if it is we prevent those diseases, then long term, right, we have more beds.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Adil. I would now take this opportunity to big up the viewers once more. I hope you're enjoying the discussion. I know you have opinions. I know you may be agreeing or disagreeing with some of what you're seeing and hearing here today at this forum, this youth post-budget forum held by the Economic Society. So what I want you to do is drop your questions, drop your comments even in the chat right now. Drop some flames while you're at it as well, because right now the discussion is going great. Things are heating up. We're right in the middle of the panel discussion, and the panelists are doing well fielding your questions. So, but we want some more from you. Right about now, what I'm going to do is introduce you to the next panelist, who is going to give us some knowledge on agriculture and food security. Her name is Precious Lily Hinds, and she's a second-year student of the UWI, pursuing a degree in geography with a major in environmental and natural resource management. She is the Food and Agriculture Faculty Representative for the year 2020-2021 and is striving to increase pride and unity within her faculty. Precious enjoys playing tennis, participating in drama productions, reading, and tutoring kids that need assistance, and encouraging others via her YouTube channel. So what I want to do is invite Precious Lily Hinds right now to give us some insight and her perspective on agriculture and food security. Precious.
Hi, thank you. Good evening to everyone. So as you all know, I'm going to be speaking on agriculture and food security. Now, the first thing that we all know, we all heard probably, or if you haven't, you need to watch your budget, about tax-free agriculture, okay? So this budget, we were allocated $1.198 billion, which was more than our previous allocation, which was $831 million. And I think that this allocation for this budget is actually really good compared to, you know, what we had last year. And last year, we weren't even going through this COVID pandemic. We weren't even going through COVID-19. So this is good, just because we're going through this pandemic. So when I say we, Trinidad and Tobago, we were an agricultural society, and we mainly focused on things like sugar and cocoa, which were used for exportation to mainly European countries. However, the rise in the oil industry occurred, right? So we all know this happened, and wages started to rise for this industry. So people were getting higher amounts of money for being inside this industry. And according to Professor Ganpat from University of the West Indies, he said that one notable issue was that the price of labor, which went up and caused these crops to be uneconomical, okay? So in the past, many households will supplement their food bills with locally grown vegetables and livestock. So this used to occur. We used to grow whatever food. We used to grow rice a lot, and you know, we would have our livestock, our cows, etc., and we would be doing our own home gardens. And now we actually have to revert back to these times, right? Because the budget, the import bill, is very high, right? It's like $1 billion per year for food imports, and it needs to be reduced. We have exported 44 million in meat and meat products. However, an estimated 700 million is what we import. So that is way over. That is way over what we actually export. So we need to actually cut that down. You know, we can't cut it down, like not tremendously, but we can't cut it down all the way where we just producing all the food for ourselves. But we can try to do better and, you know, try to actually produce food locally for everyone and to export. So agriculture is now tax-free, as I said before. Yay for that. So we can have more people getting involved, and it looks more attractive to everyone that's probably, you know, looking into this industry and being like, I maybe want to give this a try. So it's tax-free. So if you're looking into this industry, you should try, because we need more people in there. As well as a $500 million agricultural stimulus package is to be estimated, right, and funded within the year 2021. So before I get into this, I was actually reading an article, and it said that why we couldn't get in now in 2020, and I actually agree with that. I feel like if some of these stuff could have been implemented right now, but I guess we'll have to wait till 2021 to receive it. So with this stimulus package, it actually brings the budget, the allocation overall over 70% over the amount that was allocated for the last budget. So that is really good. And also there would be funding to support rapid expansion in production and marketing of selected high demand commodities with short production cycles, okay? So this would be like our vegetables and grains and small livestock, and this is what we use every day. This is what we use most of the time. So that $500 million stimulus will be used to fund these things. And high quality seeds would be produced. However, I noticed that, you know, we have a lot of importation in the imports of you have importation in the inputs of agricultural goods, right? So things like seeds, things like fertilizers, we tend to import when we can try to actually do it down here. We can try to produce it down here. We actually developed this scorpion pepper, if you all have ever heard of it. And the US actually sells these seeds. So we could like try to protect our genetic materials and produce these things for ourselves, produce these seeds for sale, and produce, you know, fertilizers and stuff like that. And also, a next thing to note was that when it had COVID, the price went up a bit higher than usual for these seeds and stuff. So producing our own locally can bring down the prices and therefore make more people want to buy to plant their home garden, increasing food security as well, right? So lands, with the issues of land, right? So lands would be, you know, issued with land tenure on idle state lands, but this had a problem with the lease. It had a lease issue, which was which occurred in the past. So hopefully we can get all of these things handled, okay? Also, locally produced food would be made more attractive to the country. So, you know, you would see like the health benefits of eating locally rather than buying stuff that has more preservatives, more fats, more of everything that is bad, that is horrible for your body. So we are trying now to, you know, to make it look more attractive. It is, it's healthier, it's better, it's local. Support your local farmers. Okay, and that is all for now. I just encourage you to read the budget and yeah. Back to Warren.
Thank you very much, Precious. And of course, Precious is also a counselor on the Guild Council. What I want to ask you, Precious, because you did identify different areas in agriculture. And I want to know what area or areas specifically do you think will be most lucrative for Trinidad and Tobago to invest in? Of course, we're talking exports, and it means that both exporting and developing would play a role in food security. So how do you respond to this? Which areas do you think would be most relevant?
Okay, nice question. Okay, so I actually think that we should, you know, go into more research with the cocoa industry, go into more research because, you know, they have a lot of like health benefits. They reduce the risk of diabetes and cancer, and cocoa in Trinidad is regarded as a high value since we grow fine and flavored cocoa. So yes, these other countries actually purchase our cocoa beans and they make chocolate and they charge it for a lot of money. And I know that in Trinidad we have some people that actually use it, but we need some more, and we need people in Trinidad to actually buy from those people. Also, Predia last me, which was I think increased by 200%, and there is a squad or like a unit for this offense. So yeah, and also with the influx of marijuana home growers, yes, we might see a lot of theft going on with people and, you know, their home gardens and stuff like that. So they need to make sure that they increase patrols and stuff and just make sure that they are really pouring into this, you know, unit. Also areas that have a lack of water, we need water. Even though your land might be fertile, you still need water for your land. Your land needs water. Vegetation needs water. Livestock needs water. So we need that in order for life to grow. And with the increased development in technology that they want to do, we actually need electricity as well, proper connections to electricity. So yeah.
Very, very accurate there. Precious. I mean, but going forward, how do you see the role of investing in agricultural technology as a means of sustaining interest and profitability in the sector?
Okay, so there are new agricultural technologies that are developing which are really profound and they are efficient and effective. One, which was mentioned within the budget that they are trying to look at, is with the drone technology, with precision farming. And this has to do with GIS. So all my geography people that listening, you know, we up there with the GIS, yes. And so we definitely need, you know, we can go into this, you know, type of technology with the drone, with the precision farming and stuff like that, because it will help to see where needs water. If there's a dry patch of land there, if there's a dry patch of land somewhere else, you will see exactly where, because it's a drone, it's hovering above, and you would see where it's like impacted by pests as well. So that is one way, you know, technology can be used to encourage young people as well, because they will realize that they don't have to just go through their field if they, you know, they're doing it at a large scale. They don't have to go through their field looking to see if it have pests on this plant. They will actually see it. If my plant needs to water, if it's failing, they will see it, which means there will be less work for you, less work for the young people. You know, they just want to be on their phone sometimes, chilling, less work for you. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Precious. And certainly, I mean, we're seeing the relevance of automation in the different industries. Reducing the amount of work that we have to put in will be a huge plus in our progress. And coming right from agriculture, where we would have talked about the scorpion pepper, what we want to do now is pepper the conversation a little more by inviting our next panelist to speak on gender responsive budgeting. So the next panelist is Shanice Clermont, and she is an undergraduate student pursuing international relations and communication studies. She sat on the head table at the Model United Nations and has completed an internship at the Institute of Gender and Development Studies, where she worked on the Reach for Rights Camp and the CEDAW for Change course. Big up IGDS, big up MON. Shanice has had extensive experience concerning gender and social development in Trinidad and Tobago, and is now a member of IGDS Ignite, where she facilitates and engages in workshops geared towards gender development. So now we invite Shanice to give us some insights on gender responsive budgeting.
Hi, good night, everyone. Thank you for having me. So let's just get straight at what exactly is gender responsive budgeting. I'm sure that was a big question for a lot of people, and some people may even think it's a novel term. Well, I'm here to let you know that gender responsive budgeting has been a thing for as long as we've been here. We have just recently coined the term gender responsive budgeting, but when we consider allocations and categorizing and segmenting and reserving money for specific courses, that's generally what gender responsive budgeting is about. I can tell you certainly what it is not. It is not budgeting for women. It is not solely about women or girls. It's about, just a second. It's about itemizing what we actually need as a population. It is making more effective and efficient use of the way we allocate money for men, women, girls, and boys. We tend to treat a budget as a gender neutral document and a strategy. But the fact is that the economy is reflective of our society. And it's clear that as men, as women, as girls, and as young boys, we all have different needs. And so gender responsive budgeting is an adapt tool which ensures that everybody's needs are being met effectively. And so there will be less wastage as we could actually pinpoint what every person needs. It also holds the government much more accountable because they have to keep in mind that they have to cater to our needs directly as a nation, and they can no longer afford to generalize what they assume we may need as certain sectors. Therefore, it also delves into public finance management, which, as we can see, corruption has been a big part of why we have not been able to progress much, even with all of these large sums of money being allocated to different sectors. So, what are some of the goals with gender responsive budgeting? The goal is to raise awareness of what of understanding gender issues, it is to determine and measure the impacts of budgets and policies on men, women, boys, and girls. And as I would have mentioned earlier, these things impact us all differently. So we can no longer continue to proceed as though we don't have different needs, as we would have seen developing out of COVID-19 and quarantine and all of these different things. We are seeing that, you know, men may require more help in certain areas, for example, mental health. Women may require more protection in certain areas, for example, domestic violence. We may also need to look at what our care economy looks like. Who are the women behind the scenes that are really keeping us afloat in this time of a global pandemic? And lastly, the last goal of gender responsive budgeting is to plan and monitor governmentary budgetary processes in terms of advancing gender equality. Gender equality is not about making women superior and making men inferior. That is the last thing on the gender equality mandate. However, our goal is so that we would be living in a more equitable society where everyone has equal access to opportunities, where young women and girls don't feel oppressed because of their sex and their gender, who they choose to identify as well as young men, because gender is not a term that only applies to women, it applies to men and boys as well. So why is gender responsive budgeting important? We must consider that when we advance gender equality, we are moving our society forward. We are no longer living in a vacuum and only catering to the interests of the bourgeois in society, the people that could afford to live in luxury. Gender responsive budgeting is a tool that could be used to reduce the inequalities that class disparity creates in this society. Gender equality is an economic concern because the implications of employment, the sexual division of labor, and power to make decisions, and even national security, it will impact men and women differently. The COVID-19 pandemic has only exacerbated these vulnerabilities, and therefore it's our duty to examine to what extent, and we need to analyze how our government plans on using fiscal policy to resolve some of these issues and to treat with some of our concerns. So, how is gender responsive budgeting relevant to our 2021 budget presentation, which you would have had yesterday? A nation cannot say it is committed to gender equality unless such commitment can be seen in its budgets. This is, as I have reiterated several times, it's really not just about women and men. We are not trying to divide or split the population in half. What we're trying to do is bring everyone together and bridge the gaps that currently exist in our system so that everyone can feel better taken care of and provided for by our government, as is their duty. With an understanding of how to plan to stimulate the economy, we have to cut subsidies, we have to pay debt, and overall projected expenditures on programs and policies. These things will improve the gender equality, or it could also exacerbate existing gender inequalities if the government fails to factor in gender responsive budgeting in their national budget. It will promote accountability and transparency. It will ensure that women are not unequally affected by revenue collection, debt payment, national expenditures, and it will help us to meet our international obligations through the convention signed on gender equality. As a nation, we become so narrow-minded, it becomes very difficult for us to remember that, you know, we are signatories to a lot of international laws and treaties that we would have convened for at the United Nations. And so it is only in line with our international obligation that we must honor and commit to these frameworks so that we can all progress and we don't get left behind in the lieu of the world. So some of my key takeaways from the budget yesterday: Vision 2030 was definitely prioritized. We heard a lot of the word digitalization. There was a lot of it. However, I feel once again, gender in and of itself was undermined. Yes, the allocation for social development was 4,963,845,000. However, that's a slight decrease from last year. And as we've been seeing, there has been a trend of decreases in the allocation of funds to the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. That means that it's now, while we're trying to cut expenditure, we need to consider, are we actually taking away all of the progress, all of the programs that we would have tried to put in place in the past? Is it that we are cutting away from our continuity in our policies, right? For the fiscal year 2021, we have seen more initiative being taken to elevate and better provide for the vulnerable community. We have also seen an increase in domestic violence cases. There has been so many cases of femicide this year. I'm sure we are losing count of the names, but you know, this is something that we have to keep in mind, and we have to consider what the impact of COVID is going to have on our social development in our society now that everybody is home. We are all in one space. You know, these are all things we need to factor in and consider, because as we would have mentioned before in the program, the economy is not simply about numbers and money and all of the maths. No, the economy is a reflection of us. We are the economy. Our society is what composes the economy. Therefore, we must consider that the economy cannot function without considering how we function on a day-to-day life. We must factor in the reality. And the reality is that with a lot of people being home, we are unable to cope. We are unable to deal with a lot of the daily stresses, and they no longer would have had the distractions they would have had before. Now, I think it's the duty of the government to put enough effort, sufficient care into the ministry responsible for this, to put more research and understand exactly what are the root and core causes of these circumstances we are facing in society right now. I think it's our duty to get to the bottom of this so that one, we could actually save more lives, and two, we could be more effective and efficient, and we could just have a better society going forward where we no longer have to live in fear, right? So, one of the good things, one of the highlights of the budget for me from a gender perspective I would have seen is the integrated community first responder system. Earlier this year, they would have implemented the gender responsive unit, which was an addition to the TTPS, in which women would have now had a separate segment in which they could report cases of sexual abuse, rape, domestic violence, etc. Now, the effectiveness of such a time will only tell. However, it's still very nice that the initiative was taken to create this segment in the first place. However, I feel like the integrated community first responder system is some continuation of that. It is going to be a data management system which will be implemented to identify quickly households where women and children and single parents require support, and in particular, female-headed and single father households, especially with elderly women, vulnerable people, and others living alone. We also have to consider mental health and the shelters for displaced persons. So this pretty much composes all of the members of, all the vulnerable members of society. And I think this is a perfect example of how gender responsive budgeting can be utilized as a tool of progression. It can be utilized as a tool to quickly analyze and cater to the needs, and not simply generalize based on the working class alone or the perceived middle class. We need to consider every single person in our society so that we could not leave anyone behind. Personally, I feel as though one of the overlooked sectors in the 2020 reading of the budget was the care economy in regards to COVID-19. The vast majority of first responders, nurses in the hospitals are women, they are female. And I felt that the fact that it was not specifically mentioned any way to compensate or to better safeguard them from this pandemic as they keep our country afloat was one of the biggest limitations in this budget. We failed to put it on paper in legislature in black and white, how we are going to look after the people that are looking after us in this global pandemic. And so I think that was one of the biggest flops of this budget. However, I think generally it was a very solid budget. I think that it encompassed the majority of the needs as a gender responsive budget should. And I think it's as a result of the hard work of the Institute of Gender and Development Studies, as well as other pressure groups in society that would have been advocating for years. This has been a process that has taken the last decade or so to get to this point, but it's coming to some fruition where we could finally see it applying on the national level, and we could see some level of progression where gender is considered nationally. So that is it for my presentation today. I think I covered everything, and thanks again for having me.
Thank you very much, Shanice. You touched on the attitude of people before, and I would like for you to expand on that a bit. Given that there's a belief that there are more important issues than gender responsive budgeting amongst our citizenry, or at least we have that perspective given, what we observe.
Okay.
So the belief is that raising revenue and lowering taxes, these things come first. And it's also accompanied with the criticism of seeing everything through a gender lens. Why would you say gender responsive budgeting, or why would you see it as a vital part of the economic process?
Okay. So in my humble opinion, I think gender is one of those things that is inextricably a part of us. Whether you conform or whether you actually do gender studies, whether you'd like to admit it or not, we are human first and foremost. And as we are human, we could either be a man or a woman, whatever spectrum in between, because sex and gender are two different things. So therefore, whether you actually conform to these beliefs or not, the fact is that we are human first. And therefore, gender responsive budgeting is vital to the economic process, because the economy is a reflection of our lives and the society we live in. The economy is not simply dollars and cents. It's not just numbers. It's not data. It's not money. It's not just the GDP. It's our standard of living. It's our happiness index. It's our rates of equality, inequality, and it's also the way in which we relate to other people, right? These are all of the things that go into our daily lived realities. And so in order to take gender out of that, that would be to take a massive part of your identity out of yourself. You can't take your sex out of yourself. You are who you are. So therefore, yes, you must consider the economy, but it's not gender neutral. It's not something that exists in a vacuum. We have to consider our humanity first.
Okay. And so then, how important are the views of women's organizations and research groups to ensure government expenditure and policies promote gender equality?
So I would have mentioned briefly that the Institute of Gender and Development Study has been advocating for decades to get us to this point where we now have some sort of policy included in the budget, where we now feel a little bit more included and no longer completely disregarded or overlooked by our national budget. However, I think I'd like to focus more on telling you what these pressure groups have been doing in the meanwhile and the progress that we could enjoy today. So in 2017, the IGDS convened a pre-budget forum on the anticipated impact of the national budget on the social sector. It was in this forum that the Permanent Secretary of Planning and Social Development, members from the Office of the Prime Minister, Gender and Child Affairs Unit, they convened and committed their support for the gender responsive budgeting project in Trinidad and Tobago. So that was only in 2017. In 2018, the IGDS continued to contribute to the gender responsive National Budget Day process by participating in a live commentary providing a gendered analysis of the budget. So this seems very novel, it seems very new, but it would have taken a lot of progress for us to get to this point. And so in 2019, the IGDS collaborated with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development on developing a state sector pilot project to build capacity for gender responsive budgeting in the public service. This project builds on public policy efforts to mainstream gender in the public service, in particular gender responsive budgeting. Initiatives were already on the way under the Office of the Prime Minister, where they would select and train gender focal points in both the ministries and the state agencies. So what that pretty much would have done is that they would have had persons who would become experts where gender, mainstream and gender is concerned in these sectors. And so they could now educate and inform their peers so that it could become normalized, to say the least. In addition, the ministers of government had participated in training provided through the collaboration between the Parliament and the UN system. The Ministry of Planning and Development is also working to advance gender responsive budgeting in the development of this. And lastly, the most recent project we would have done was, we would have formed a project team with the representatives from the Ministry of Housing and Development, and where we collectively decided the first phase was to convene a 2-day gender responsive budgeting workshop for key members of staff so that they'd be able to integrate this into their work as they would have prepared the budget for this year. With building capacity for gender responsive budgeting and this project, the ministry is now able to better develop and manage its annual budget in response to a call circular. This was demonstrated in contribution to the national and international gender equality conventions, keeping in mind that we belong to a global network. We do not live in a vacuum, and Trinidad and Tobago, we have to collaborate with the other nations in this world. And we would have demonstrated, yes, the conventions, and we would have also contributed to the Sustainable Development Goals. And moreover, we would have developed and integrated gender-based indicators in these sectors, which could now be reported for the convention of the Vision 2030 goals. So yes, gender-responsive budgeting was very much a part of developing the Vision 2030 goals that we are now using to guide our national movements for the next decade or so. This project is now in its second phase, and we look forward to seeing what that will reap. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much for answering that question, Shanice. And for those of you just joining us on the live, I want to remind you that you're here with the Economic Society, and this is the Youth Post-Budget Forum. We have had presentations by the members of our panel, right? They would have entertained questions that came from the audience, and thankfully we have such an engaged audience. We have a lot more questions to come. So what we want to do right now is close off the panel discussion for a bit, get a little more involved, get our hands into the heart of the matter, as I like to say, or the belly of the beast, and open up the discussion, right? So just a reminder, we've talked a bit about economic growth. We've had some conversation on economic development. We've had conversation on health. We touched on agriculture and food security. And then we most recently just came from a discussion on gender responsive budgeting. Economic Society, we're here, we're talking about the budget that happened yesterday. And so we're going to get into the questions and answers now, this conversation going forward. So I want to bring our first panelist back to the floor to answer a question from the audience, right? We haven't heard from you in a while. Miss Dina Sookdeo. Dina, you mentioned spending could have been more efficient in education, in the education sector. How exactly do you think this could have been achieved by the government?
Well, you know, I'm sure a lot of people have heard me say this before. I'm known for preaching this. My friends tell me I preach this. But in a time like this, when we know we need to cut expenditure and things like that, I'm all for incentivizing education, and I'm all for pumping resources into that sector. But fact of the matter is, if we take a program like GATE, it has been so inefficient in the past years. We have seen a lot of students who can financially afford their tuition being awarded GATE, right? And it's not such a bad thing, but at the same time, it could be more efficient and fair, because if you look at a lot of studies done, you also see that, you know, GATE was created to really target the poorer in society and really financially help them out. Yet a large portion of university students come from the middle to high income brackets. So the people who are actually benefiting from GATE weren't the ones targeted at all in the first place. So what I think we can do is actually cut our allocation to GATE and somehow only offer GATE to those programs that, you know, are necessary for our economic growth, are necessary to stimulate our labor to be pushed into our non-booming tradable sectors, agriculture, manufacturing. You know, when you give incentives to these sectors alone, you would probably see more students pursuing these degrees and so on like that. So I think that is one where we can definitely adjust the GATE program, and it needs to be considered.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask Precious. Precious, where are you? I mean, everybody mounting their systems at home and these kind of things. We certainly, hydroponics is on the tip of our tongues these days. How beneficial do you believe hydroponics would be to agricultural entrepreneurs?
Okay, so yes, hydroponics is widely talked about, especially now. So the benefits of using hydroponics is that, one, you wouldn't have to use, you know, chemical pesticides, because you don't really need that in a hydroponic system, right? So you're cutting down costs there one time, right? And you're also able to get indoor farming being done to areas that don't have, suitable soils for growing as well. And you are also able to produce twice as faster with hydroponic systems. So yeah, those are three main ways in which hydroponic systems can be beneficial to somebody who wants to get into it.
All right. But sounds good. I might myself invest in a hydroponic system. Let's get things cracking here in Powder Magazine. I have a general question here to the panel, right? And I think I want to firstly direct this to the Econ Society president. How do you, as young people, feel about allocations made to areas and industries that directly affect young people? With the advent of the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service, do you think we've done enough, or have we established a ministry without the financial resources to truly develop and prepare young people for the world ahead, especially as we are still deeply in the COVID-19 pandemic? So Ruqayyah, what is your response to this question from our viewing audience?
All right, thank you to the person that sent in this question. It was kind of like a big chunky question, so I'm gonna try and take this in parts, right? So from a youth perspective, what parts of the economy that directly affect young people that is something that we were looking forward to? My thing is, which part of the economy does not affect young people? Yeah. If you want to talk about the car industry, young people have cars. If you want to talk about agriculture, there's some young people in agriculture, studying agriculture, have parents in agriculture. Young people in the healthcare system, look at how many doctors that we have right now at Mount Hope studying to be doctors. Look at how many people we have in the healthcare system. So everything is about young people. Everything is about people in general. So if I had to say, like, from a youth perspective, if we were to look at all of the sectors and look at the allocations to all of the sectors and see how it could trickle down and affect us, I would personally say not enough has been done for it to trickle down and reach the young people. So it's there, but in terms of trickling down and reaching the young people, I don't think so, because we don't do anything with the future in mind. There's a saying that, you start something with the end in mind, but we don't do that here. We just start something with 2 months and 2 months is our vision. Actually, our vision is 5 years. Let's be real. I feel as though that our economics is also politically motivated, which gets in the way of actual growth and development. And this is not directed towards any political party. It is directed to whoever sits in the parliament, because the parliament is not made up of the government alone. We have members of parliament, and members of parliament can be from the government, and it can be from the opposition as well. So in that regard, everything affects young people, and what is being done currently is not enough for young people. And then the second part of the question, which is talking about the ministry that was formed, the Ministry of Youth and National Development. My concern is, when we're talking about youth, you cannot group all young people in one category. So you cannot see all young people as disadvantaged. You cannot see all young people as creative. You cannot see all young people as technologically inclined. I, for one, could probably only use Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, right? I could barely use Canva as well. So you cannot make that assumption that all young people are the same, or all young people want the same thing. So when it is we're doing these analysis and stuff like that into what it is young people want, we need to make sure that we're doing it in such a way where we're getting actual different opinions from young people. So you have those young people who are heavily involved in academia, like myself. Ask me what I want, right? Ask those who are in the creative industries, ask them what they want. I think we've used the approach when it comes to youth development in the wrong way. We just tend to assume that young people want handouts, and we don't necessarily understand that. No, what I want? I want actual training and development so that I could gain the skills to build my life and my career. I don't need the state to give me anything. The state needs to provide a working framework that I can work with and the other young people could work with. So that is what the Ministry of Youth and National Development has to do. You have to recognize the different needs of young people from different communities, and don't only provide opportunities for funding to go to conferences. Not that alone. You could do that because that's important. But please don't forget the communities that nobody does look at. And then here's Gwan saying them young people nowadays, they gone astray, they need fixing and all these kind of things. So we need a multifaceted approach. We need to get the multiple needs of all of the young people in the country to find out what it is they truly want.
Yeah, we hearing you loud and clear, and I know that response would have resonated with the audience. It certainly did with the panel here. And so I want to ask Adil, on the same question actually, do you think we've done enough, or have we established a ministry without the financial resources to truly develop and prepare young people for the world ahead? What do you think about this question?
I'll give you my honest response here, Warren, and I'll be completely honest with you. I don't think we even started doing enough. Right? Now, I know that it's definitely more than what has been done previously, and I'll applaud the necessary parties for that. But with respect to young people getting involved and being able to have the proper opportunities that they should have, I don't think that we have nearly enough. And I think that we need to do more as a nation to understand that the young people are not, and actually I'm stealing this line from Ruqayyah, but the young people are not the future, the young people are today. And that's what people don't understand, is that they keep saying the youth of the nation is the future, but the youth of the nation is the now. And we need to be involved now so that we can start to make the changes for the next generation to come.
Thank you, Adil. And if you're joining us live and you believe that the youth are the now, drop some flames in the chat right now. We want to see you. We want to see you. And so I have a question here on the SDGs. And we know all the youth leaders that we have on the panel very familiar with these SDGs. But I want to throw this question at our VP here with us on from the Econ Society. And I want to know, do you think we're well on our way for achieving any of the 17 SDGs by 2030, Ms. Dana Sookdeo? Besides GRB, what recommendations do you have to achieve such?
I don't think that we are well on our way to achieving most SDGs by 2030. You know, take poverty, for instance. COVID plunged a large number of the world's population back into poverty. It's undoing a lot of progress we had in quality education and in health and a lot of these things. So I think that we might not be well on our way, given that we don't know what the future holds for COVID. I think that I would not be able to give any sort of recommendations until COVID has, you know, calmed down a bit, and we can sort of get back on our feet economically, and we can actually come together again and start working together, you know, like take SDG 17, for example, partnerships. And I think with COVID, we see a lot of undoing in that area as well. So once again, it just comes back to the answer is no, I don't think that we can achieve most SDGs by 2030.
Thank you, Dana. Let's take a trip back to IGDS. And I want to ask Shanice then, given the primary focuses of our economy and what is needed for recovery post-COVID, how would gender-based budgeting aid the recovery process? In a Trinidad perspective, of course, the audience member asked for the question to
I would certainly bring it back home for sure. So my primary focus is for our economy with this budget, I would say with regards to COVID-19 is health, security, and education. And so I would have broken it down mentally. The health sector, I think we need to look at the care economy. When we think of gender responsive budgeting, we have to consider who are these health workers that are keeping our country afloat in this time of COVID-19? Who are these people that are putting their lives on the line on a daily basis to ensure that the vast majority of our citizenry could enjoy some of the luxuries they have? Because yes, we are on strict lockdown, but the fact is we have not been as impacted as the rest of the world with regards to COVID-19, and we can thank these people on our strict parameters for that. But we still need to put measures in place where these healthcare workers could feel adequately compensated, because now they are in a circumstance where they have to work overtime in order to care for us, because COVID-19 is something that nobody predicted and it's way beyond our control. This is something literally life and death, and it's something that has been taking the world by storm. So I think with regards to health in a Trinidadian perspective, we really need to consider the women and the men who are in our healthcare system. And we really need to put measures in place to adequately cushion the care economy so that nobody feels taken advantage of or exploited, especially in a time where everything is out of our control. Secondly, I think in the national security sector, we definitely need to look at gender-based violence. We have to tackle domestic violence. And with that, we have to look at the core causes. Gender-responsive budgeting allows us to take into consideration the fact that some men may not know how to deal with their frustrations. And so this is why we're seeing an increase with these cases, because they are now in a situation which is something unique, something new. A lot of time, men, they typically could traditionally consider the breadwinner. So they would have been in an environment where they come home, they have certain expectations, and they would not have been in their space with their families as frequently as they are now. With all of us being restricted, with all of us being home, we must consider what are these root causes, whether it's the inability to access mental health, whether it's the inability to cope with stressors in society, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's addiction, whatever the case may be. Now we have to look at these core causes, which would be tied to our health sector actually. And we also need to consider, what is it that our women need in this time frame? Is it that these women feel frustrated, out of control, especially with regards to education, which is my next point. The other core focus with regards to our economy in the next year, especially, is education, right? And while we have to consider the role of women in families, I think we also need to consider that in the Vision 2030, I think the main thing that stood out to me was the digitalization of pretty much our entire country. How we get this done? And the next question is, what role are women going to play in this? As I would have mentioned before, gender is not just about women, but we have to consider the fact that women in STEM is rare. A lot of women do not have access to STEM, whether it's the fact that they don't have access to resources, whether it's a class issue. The fact is, a lot of women do not partake in science and technology, engineering or mathematics. So we need to consider, is this creating a culture of exclusivity where only men, it's completely male dominated, because only the vast majority of men seem to hold interest in this sector, especially in regards to digitalization? How are women going to contribute in that regards, with regards to how we're going to manage ourselves in the future? When you say digitalization, we need a little bit more specificity. Are you just going to scan documents and upload it online, or are you going to actually create frameworks, technological frameworks online, in which continuity is allowed and people, irregardless of age, sex, gender, are able to access information in the future, right? And the last thing I want to touch on is agriculture as well, because I'm trying to tie in everything. That was something heavily stressed in this budget, and I think it was something very good. It was a good step towards food security and sustainability. It was also a good nod to the SDGs. However, we have to consider, again, this is another male-dominated industry. Do women have access to this industry, especially where young women are concerned? Do we have opportunities available in this industry? Is it that it's creating a culture of exclusivity where it's expected that only men or boys are going to be farmers? Only women are just going to be ones who probably, prepare the vegetables, and they only have some sort of impact in this industry in catering or food preparation, and not necessarily the manufacturing of raw products, or even the development of and hybridization of these fruits and vegetables in and of itself. So what we need to consider with gender responsive budgeting is, where can we create opportunities? Where can we create impactful things in the future where everybody's included in society, and we pretty much leave no one behind, regardless of age, sex, gender, or class?
Thank you, Shanice, and very insightful responses. So if you're in the chat right now, if you're in the audience right now, and you haven't shared this forum with anybody, take a moment and do it right now on your timeline. Share up the thing, drop some fire flames in the chat. We like to bring the fire, because youth is about vibrancy, and we definitely have that vibes here in the Economic Society Youth Post-Budget Forum. What I want to do now is post a question to the Guild FFA rep, Precious. Do you think the current allocation and proposed removal of taxes on the agricultural sector are enough to really develop a culture of domestic food production and in turn, food security. How does 1.198 billion TTD address an import bill of food in the amount of 6 billion TTD? Do you think it is enough? It sounds like one of your colleagues straight from class come to hot up your head right now with this question. And we know you can certainly give them a run for their money with this response.
Okay, so this was a very big question as well. So do I think it would be enough, right? The removal of the taxes, yes, it makes the industry seem much more inviting, much more like it's like better that way, that we have no taxes. Yes, that's good, right? But I would encourage food security because more people will come and stuff. But do I think the 1.198 billion TT dollars, right, is enough? No, it is not enough, because we literally spend $6 billion, like way more than how much we get in the budget, right? But it's a start. It's an increase from the last budget, and we just need to try to not build policies and things, but yes, we build in policies and things, but go with action in order to fulfill these policies, to have like a starting point of where we can get to food security. Because I know they had this plan for food security even at the last budget. The last budget, they wanted food security again, but we didn't fully get to there. We didn't get to food security. But if we start with the budget at $1.198 billion, we can probably get somewhere and get some more people interested from the lack of tax. So yeah.
A very positive outlook there by Precious. And I have a question here, and I think I'll direct this to Adil, our panelist that spoke on health. Given the increase in forums and youth talk in the last few months, how long again, if anyone has plans, for active government pressure by youth leaders? Also, does anyone currently fear the high chance of this digitalization increasing costs more than increasing productivity?
Warren, I just had a feeling you're calling me for that question. And as I see it, I was like, yeah, that's mine. But it's a really good question, and I like the fact that it asks for something like that. With respect to plans that currently being made for active government pressure by the youth leaders, I can't say that I'm aware of any, but I certainly do think it's something that will be inevitable very, very soon. I love the fact that we are getting more opportunities as youth personnel to have a say in these sort of forums and whatever. But we need to have more of a say than we're really allowed, especially on the forums that run through national media. I think that the youth don't get the time that they need to properly portray the points that they want to make and voice the voices they had a voice, So that's what I'll say on that. And with respect to the active government pressure, I honestly think it's something that will be inevitable very soon. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. The next question, hold on. Ruqayyah, you want to touch on this? Because I know you're real passionate about it.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Sure, no problem. So in terms of, so given the increase in youth forums and discussions that has been happening, and when are young people going to take a more active approach? My question is, isn't this active approach? Because public discourse is how you get change. Now, all right, I understand sometimes we get a bit frustrated with the talk shop culture and there's no real change. But we have to be realistic in the sense that in order to get any sort of change for a system, you have to understand the system that you work in. Trinidad and Tobago, actually, we are very, very, very involved in terms of youth work and youth activism in the Caribbean. I have many colleagues from different parts of the Caribbean that actually says, you know, I admire the young people of Trinidad so much because y'all are just doing anything, like something will happen and somebody will start a campaign starting to talk about it, or somebody will throw up a live on Instagram or something and start talking about the issues. So this is activism. This is you using your voice to do something. And in terms of pressure on the government, you have to remember, if it is you want a response out of the government, you have to be equipped to demand something from the government. So you can't just go with the government and be like, okay, well, A, B, C, D, E, F, G happening, and it needs a fix now. You have to remember that whilst the government is, yes, there in place to, you know, create a society that's equal for all, they serve us. And we need to hold them accountable, and we need to let them know what it is we want for our betterment. And a lot of times young people aren't necessarily given any platforms, or we're not sure how to approach it in a solution-oriented way. And that is not hiding behind nobody. I'm not here trying to, you know, pretend like if every single young person is perfectly equipped with going and speaking to any government official and be like, well, this is what we need in our community. The fact is that we're young and we are seeing these things and we just want some change and we want our officials to listen to us. So yes, we're talking. Yes, we're having public discourse, but that does not mean that young people aren't doing anything. That means we are having discussions that the older generation is not having. In fact, young people are the only ones right now who are advocating for any kind of change. So that is how it has to happen. And slowly but surely, by this public discourse, by me talking with my guild president might be able to give me a thing or two about writing policy. And then I get that knowledge from him, and then I know how to write policy. And then I go back to my group or my club and be like, hey guys, this is how we could work in a policy. And then we take that and we write it, we put it in a letter and we send it to a minister. That is how you get change, and it starts from public discourse. So when do we plan to? We're doing that all now. The Econ Society is here having a post-budget analysis, and I myself know that I have invited quite a few politicians to look and see and to get our feedback and suggestions. So definitely, I think young people are doing it. It's just about continuing to do it and put active pressure. So I definitely think that we're going in a fantastic direction. And I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in, but turn on your mics, guys, and chime in. Turn on your mics and chime in.
Yeah, certainly the discussion is open. Where it's heating up, is going great. We know we have the Adil on pause to the second part of the question as well, but I have to show my appreciation for that response, because it means that we have multiple approaches to doing things. And whilst, you know, people might imagine UWI students burning tires in the road or blocking the gate, this is our forte, you know, having discussions. And why should we be screaming in the faces of those we have hired to work for us? We meet them with the terms of reference and we say, listen, this is what we hired you to do, right? So thank you, Ruqayyah. And we want to return to the question. And I want to repose this to Adil, but I want to also invite Shanice to give us perspective on this part here, which asks, does anyone currently fear the high chance of digitalization increasing costs more than increasing productivity? What do you think about this, Adil?
I definitely think that's something that is a very real risk that can be realized. With respect to digitalization, we know that it's not going to be cheap, right? And at the end of the day, it comes down to how it is the population and the persons in the different sectors are going to use that form of digitalization. And if it is they're going to be responsible with it, or if it is they're going to be irresponsible with it. That comes down to us as individuals. I do think that the government can't really ensure like 100% that the increased cost of the digitalization is going to result in increased productivity. I think it comes down to the employers and the persons who are in charge of these persons that use these things. In the health sector, I definitely can't see it being something that would increase the productivity for sure, without a doubt. One of the biggest problems we have in the health sector is the fact that most of our files are actually hard copy. So if it is, you see people going to do their research papers or studies or whatever, they had to run through a whole set of files. And whereas if it is, everybody used to take the histories or whatever on an iPad or something, you just type it in and you find it one time,
To answer that, Adil. Shanice, what's your take on this?
Okay, hi. So my take on this is, yes, it will be expensive. It will increase the cost, but I think we also need to consider who could be left behind by this initiative. Digitalization, yes, it sounds good, but we also need to consider, is our society adapted to this? Can we actually, across the board, manage as a society to say, yes, we could progress with this? We also need to consider that in the education system right now, there are hundreds and thousands of students who do not even have access to a laptop or internet in order to access these things. So yes, we're going to digitalize the society, but with it comes an additional cost of how are you going to keep yourself accountable to include everybody and not create a society of exclusivity where only middle class upwards could afford to be educated, to afford to access different resources, could afford to do any of these things. You also have to keep in mind there's a part of the population that is illiterate. They cannot read. Even to do simple things, they need assistance when they go to physical on-site things, right? When you digitalize a society, that means people are expected to work independently. Have you put any thought at all into how you're going to make this accessible to everybody? What about people with vulnerabilities, people who may be challenged with disabilities? Are you making this accessible across the board so that a blind person would be able to access the information, a deaf person would be able to access the information, and so it would go? We need to keep this in mind. So yes, digitalization, but we also have to look at how these things are going to impact different sectors of society differently, and put provisions in place to bridge the inequality and the gaps that this system will inevitably create. And increasing productivity, that will come as well with a change in perspective in our population and our attitudes as people. And I just want to add to the point which would have been before with regards to youth activism, which is activism with the whole. In order to effect change in society, it cannot be done from a top-down approach. It cannot be the government handing you a decree and telling you this is how you act now. It has to be a societal attitude change. The government cannot tell you how to feel about something until you have decided as a society, this is how I feel about something. This is what I want my country to look and reflect, because it's a reflection of you. Therefore, when we think of increased productivity, we have to consider one, accessibility, and two, we need to consider how it will impact different segments of our society.
Thanks, Shanice. I want to hear from Dina. And of course, we have a diverse panel with different backgrounds. So my question to you, Dina, is coming straight off of the digitalization conversation. And given the fact that we have a diverse population, different people have different levels of literacy and that kind of thing. Economic growth. Let's say we advance, we extrapolate the goals from where we are now. We know we're in a baby stage or a fetal stage when it comes to digitalization. But what if we were to advance to the point of placing a chip in our hands? Would this make things easier for the parts of the population who have these struggles to access these services, these physical services, as Shanice would have pointed out?
Absolutely not, and I agree with her. You need to put a lot of thought and consideration into these things, and you need to definitely find ways, if you're going to create that kind of shift in your society, to do business differently, and to doing things like putting a chip in you, that is basically changing your everyday life. And you're going to have to put measures in place for the vulnerable, for the poor, for the people in society who have disabilities and can't cope with these things.
Thank you. But wouldn't just an addendum to this question, wouldn't it be easier then if to just wave my hand with the chip as opposed to having to struggle to learn these new systems and everything? Wouldn't it just be easier to wave my hand and access the service?
Of course, but what I'm trying to say is that while it's easier, there are people in society who will not be able to cope with it, and I just think that we need to bridge those inequalities. But it's definitely easier, and it will be easier to do ease of business and these kind of things with that kind of system in place.
Thank you, Dana. And Precious, I have a question for you here. straight from the audience. The agri sector has contributed to less than 1% to the agri sector has contributed to less than 1% in our national GDP, despite government incentives over the last few decades. The allocation and incentives are great for agriculture, but the bigger question to be made is how are we going to attract people to the agricultural industry?
Yeah, so that is definitely a great point. So I had touched on this before, just like briefly, but definitely, you know, proper policies, management, and marketing of the agricultural industry is needed, right? So we need to showcase the benefits of being in agriculture, whether it be on news articles, whether it be on social media, wherever it is, right? So we need to show the health benefits, even producing your own local goods can reduce food miles, which contribute to obviously like climate change and everything like that with food miles. And also we need to show that the fact that even producing goods and producing it sustainably can lead to, you know, a beneficial aspect. It can lead to it being beneficial to the environment and stuff like that, right? But definitely marketing and stuff plays a huge role as to why people will get into the sector. You know, some people consider like the tertiary sector, the tertiary like jobs in the tertiary sector, you know, the services and stuff like that as being, you know, the high quality, well-paying jobs and stuff. But actually recently I have seen that the cocoa farmers, they made over $10 million, like approximately like $10 million. So if you get into cocoa farming, you making over like, let me say like let me say $1 million. But yeah, you could get a substantial amount of money from doing agriculture. So these things need to be pushed forth. You need to see these things on the news. Sometimes we see good news. We see good news. So we need to put these things up on the news. We need to put these things on social media because yes, doing agriculture, you can make a lot of income. That is why a lot of people, we have a lot of agricultural students in FFA. And we need to also highlight that we have a lot of it's a degree. You could come and do it. You could learn the proper way of, you know, managing your agribusiness and stuff like that and make an income. And there are also other ways that needs to be highlighted with the hydroponics and the precision farming and stuff like that needs to be highlighted. I saw a day on news, they highlighted it once with the hydroponics with this woman in Trinidad that was doing it. So they need to do it maybe a weekly special with agriculture. Come and learn agriculture with FFA on the news or something like that where we seen with Dean and stuff. So yeah, we need to definitely do something. We need to market it, you know. When we see stuff, it will just print in our brain. Yes, we can, you know, I could actually try to plant 500 lettuce or something. Okay, don't go and plant 500 lettuce, but I'm just saying, you know. So yeah, marketing is definitely one of the things we need to do.
Sounds like we have a new proposal on the table from the Guild FFA rep. So I expect to see the paperwork and I expect to see this initiative being rolled out in semester 2. All right. So we've come to that time in the program, folks, our viewing audience, everybody that would have been with us today for the Economic Society Youth Post-Budget Forum, where the question and answers that you would have fielded to our panelists were answered. I hope you were satisfied with the responses. And now I would like to invite a member of the Economic Society Executive, the PRO, Mr. Sachin Dookie, to give the vote of thanks. And it has been my pleasure to be your moderator today. Sachin, over to you.
Thank you, Warren. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for being part of our Youth Post-Budget Forum. To all of our viewers, our specially invited guests, we truly value and appreciate your participation, your feedback, and your attendance to today's festivities. On that note, I would like to thank all of our stakeholders, our partners, for working assiduously to ensure that today's event was a success, a resounding one at that. So the marketing and communications, thank you so much for working with us to ensure today's planning and execution went as planned and was smooth. To the Guild, thank you for allowing us to stream our event on your Facebook page. To the Guild President himself, Mr. Warren Anderson, for so graciously accepting to moderate our event. To the Department of Economics for supporting us, for all the faculties and their representatives who have been part of our panel. And lastly but not least, I would like to thank every panelist, our dynamic, youthful panelists, who have taken their time and contributed on their budgets, their thought-provoking, insightful, and truly resounding suggestions and thoughts into the budget and how it affects our economy going forward. Thank you all for your thoughts. So Shanice, Adil, Precious, Ruqayyah, and Dana, thank you so much. We hope especially that young people felt represented and felt their voices being heard with our event. And this is just a start of further discussion to come to get the youth voices out there on the national agenda. So the ESU remains committed to providing such platforms in the national youth discourse. So thank you all, everyone again. Back to you, Warren.
Thank you, Sachin. That was such an endearing vote of thanks, and it was indeed my pleasure to be invited by the Econ Society today to moderate this session. And as a member of the Econ Society, I have to say I am quite proud of the executive and certainly the members that would have contributed here today. So with that said, members of the viewing audience, we thank you for your contributions once more. And that's it. That's all, folks. We're out.